so this video is all about how I create my homemade masks using Yupo paper and regular Copier paper, and how to use those masks on the gel plate to produce a range of different techniques. I use these papers during mixed media projects. So this is, I'll show you the same process as how I went to create the papers for this mixed media process. So if that's something you may be interested in, please watch the video and like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video. Sign up to my newsletter using the link in the description below if you would like to receive my free little mini course that's all about mastering the one pull print. And there is also a video on there about how to prepare and preserve your botanicals for gel printing as well. Along with regular updates about workshops and what I'm up to out and about and my own artwork. Also, there will be a link to join the waitlist for my new online course, Pushing the Boundaries of Gel Printing, which is due to release again in the new year. So let's get printing. Okay, so today I'm going to show you, I've done quite a lot of videos using homemade masks, but I didn't realise that I hadn't actually shown you how I go about making these homemade masks. So these are masks that I've made, you know, a long time ago. They've got multiple layers of paint on and I use them on a regular basis, and this is my box that I've built up and use a lot in workshops. And I use this paper to make my stencils. It's Yupo paper. So this is traditionally used for using with alcohol inks because it's got a shiny surface to it, that obviously the ink then flows across the surface much more easily. I bought some of this paper to use with alcohol inks. It wasn't my thing. It's a lovely process. It just didn't float my boat. So I find myself with excess amount of Yupo paper, and I just thought I'll try making some stencils out of it. And actually it works really, really well. I find it much better than using the actual stencil paper that you can buy. You could use document wallets. There's lots of different materials you could use to make masks and stencils out of, but I've just got some of this Yupo paper and I just love it. I think it's really good. It's quite strong, it's durable, it lasts quite a long time. It is a little bit more expensive, but for me and my artwork, I think it's worth that little bit of extra money. So inspiration. So these masks that I'm going to create are going to be mid-century shapes is my theme. So what I've done is I've just got these shapes, just searching a range of things, books that I've got, Pinterest. I just put a search in for mid-century modern shapes on the internet. You can even go on Canva and put a search in for mid-century shapes and you get lots of different shapes coming up, and I've just picked a few of my favourites. So what I've done is I use these as kind of templates, and then I've just held them up against a window and traced roughly, because I'm not very accurate at cutting things out, so they are going to be a bit wibbly wobbly, and I'm okay with that. So I've got them onto the Yupo paper, but I think I'm also going to cut them out of the actual Copier paper as well, because you do get a very different print from the Yupo paper mask than a Copier paper. So we'll have a look at those different effects as well. So let's get cutting. I'm going to have a go at using this Gyro Cut Pro tool. My lovely friend Rachel gave me this as a gift. So by no means is this kind of a paid promotion, anything like that. This is just me having a play with this gift. Now, I find it quite difficult to use, but I'm still trying to use it as a knife, as a scalpel when I'm cutting. Where when my husband and daughter have had a play with this, they're much freer with it and it works much freely and better for them. And I think it's because they're using it as a drawing tool rather than my mindset is I need to cut these out and I'm holding it and using it the way I would a knife. So again, I do think it's worth experimenting with because they do have very mixed reviews on there. But let's have a go anyway. So I'm going to start with this shape and let's see how we get on. See, I'm still using it as a knife and it's quite difficult, I think. So I've increased the speed on this because obviously it was taking me quite a long time trying to get used to it. I just thought I'd have a go on the Copier paper to see if it was the Yupo paper that was making it more difficult to cut. And I think that is part of the problem that I was having, is because it's a shiny surface, it wasn't cutting through quite so cleanly. But you know, I think this tool is worth experimenting with. It's just, I think it's more of an operator's error on my behalf rather than the tool. I think it can be a really good tool. It's just, it does take a bit of practice to get used to. And you'll see in a few minutes that I do actually switch back to just a knife, a scalpel to finish cutting the shapes out. So this is kind of a slow process. In reality, this took me the best part of an hour to cut all of these shapes out and prepare them ready to gel print with. It is, you know, worth investing a bit of time creating these masks, because especially when you create them out of Yupo paper or, you know, whatever plastic or acetate, whatever you decide to print them from, because they will last for multiple prints. So it is worth taking that time and creating some shapes that you're interested in as well. But it is quite repetitive, so I am going to skip further along to the end when we can start printing. So I've got everything ready to print with. I've got my roll-off sheets with my brayer. I've chosen these 3 colours. So I've chosen neutral, which is my grey. I've got my turquoise and my indigo. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to be pulling wet layers of paint. So I'm going to start with my lightest colour first, then go to the turquoise and then finish with the indigo, which is the darkest colour. I've got 2 piles of masks made. So one pile out the Yupo paper, which we're going to play with, and the other just out of some Copier paper, because we'll get a completely different look from those. I'm going to be printing onto just cartridge paper out of a sketchbook. It's 160 GSM. And I'm also going to be pulling the ghost print onto some wet strength tissue paper. So let's get printing. Okay, so I'm starting with the opaque neutral grey. And again, you only want a thin, even layer of paint. Okay. And I'm going to start laying my shapes down. Not overthinking it, really just kind of popping them down as quick as I can before it dries. Okay, and going in with my layer, my cartridge paper, giving it a good rub. Use my fingers to get down in between those shapes. And what you're aiming for what I call windows or gappy bits from your masks. So you're going to get a balance of white space where the next layer is going to come through and areas of colour that you can build your layers on. Okay, and there we have our first pull. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these off. Now the Yupo paper, because it's shiny, the paint doesn't dry very quick on the back of the mask. So when I put these down again, they will transfer that grey colour. So if you don't want the transfer of the colour, you either need to clean them or use the other side of the mask. I quite like that it's going to blend and we're going to get different colours, and that's when the experimentation and the happy accidents come, because you just can't predict what's going to happen. If you did want to clean them, just use a baby wipe and a piece of kitchen towel to dry them off. But like I say, I'm quite happy to just let those imperfections and happy accidents come through. And there you can see with the first ghost print. If I put that on some white paper, you'll see it better. So we're going to use those same 2 pieces of paper, and now we're going to go in with the turquoise. I'm not going to clean my plate. You can if you want to. I quite like the idea that some of this little bit of line work that's left, again, the imperfections, I quite like the idea of that coming through and happening. Okay, so I'm going to use that again because I do really like that shape. Trying to think of the composition a bit better this time. It was a little bit off on the last one. Let's try using this. Again, really like that shape. I've got another one of those somewhere. I'm going to use that there. Okay. And just going back in again. Okay, so let's pull that back and see what we've got. Ooh, busy, very busy. Okay. And then I'm going to pull these back. And go in with my tissue paper. There you go. Actually prefer the ghost prints that are building up. Let's put that on some white paper again. Although it's busy, I think I prefer that to the first pull. Okay, so let's go with our final layer. Now I'm going to try and not put quite as much of the masks on because it's very busy. So I'm going to try and simplify it a little bit. So I'll maybe just go with one of those down the side. Just want something smaller. Let's just use the edge of that. Okay, let's try that. There we go. The mask has come off with that. Take these off. And go in with the tissue paper for the final tanning. Okay, it's quite nice. That's on the tissue paper. So what we're going to try next is we're going to try with the masks that I made out of copier paper. So I'm just going to put those Yupo to one side so I don't get mixed up. So, and I'm going to do the exact same process again. Grey. So let's use that there. Okay. First one going down. And there we have our first print. We need to be a little bit more gentle when pulling the masks made out of copier paper off, because they're more likely to tear when they've soaked up that moisture from the paint. Once you've got a couple of layers of paint either side of the mask, they are quite robust, but those initial uses where they're new, they're quite difficult to pull off without ripping. So do kind of take care, especially where you've got very thin edges. Now, can you see there on the ghost print? I'll try and... So it leaves much more of a kind of line, which is quite nice. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm not going to take it off with a tissue paper. I'm going to let it dry. It will dry almost instantly because it's so, the lines are so fine. And I'm going to go in with my next colour. And hopefully that will also pick up, oh, way too much, bit of a splatter. Hopefully those lines will print on the next print as well, is this wet paint activates that dry paint. So let's put these down. It's quite good as well because you can see where you put them last time, so you can kind of see what you're going to get again. So quite curly, but again, flatten them out to dry between some sheets of greaseproof paper and some books, and they'll be good to go. Let's go this way. Okay, I'll go in a second. There we go. So it picked up some of the line work, but actually not as much as I thought it would. Which I think's a good thing, because then I'm hoping, oh, see, it's starting to rip. We could pick up something quite nice with that line work afterwards. Okay. So again, let that dry, and I'm going to go in with the indigo. Now my copier paper masks are extremely curly now. So I'm going to try and put that coming off the page slightly. Okay, last layer. Again, super busy. And that did lift a lot of the line work up. Actually quite a nice pattern left on the plate. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. So I've decided I'm going to pull the print using gold. I don't use a lot of metallics in my work, but I just thought it might be a nice contrast to pull that line work. Okay, so let's get that paper down. Oh. Down while that paint's wet. Okay, so after leaving this for a few minutes to dry, let's have a look. Oh, that's nice. And it's pulled off all that beautiful line work that you just don't get with the Yupo paper. There we go. Okay, so let's have a look what we've got. So this was the first print, 3 layers using the Yupo paper masks. Would I use it as a print as a whole? Probably not. It's a little bit too busy for me. However, I may look at taking smaller sections from this print. And the same with this one. Again, don't think the edges are as crisp when you're using the Copier paper masks. But again, probably wouldn't use it as a whole. But again, might make some interesting smaller compositions, quite like that smaller. That works quite well. Yeah, definitely works better is 2 smaller compositions that way. We also have probably my favourite, the beautiful wet strength tissue paper, and in a mixed media project that's going to look stunning. And we've also got the beautiful gold that we pull the final print, which was the line work from the Copier paper masks. So other things that I kind of use these prints for, if I show you this mixed media project that I did, this is how this mixed media project began. I used my masks to create different prints and different compositions. And again, although I wouldn't use that as a whole, cutting out those shapes individually are really quite interesting to use in a mixed media composition. So that's how this began, and having the Copier paper to then, not the Copier paper, the wet strength tissue paper to overlay that I can then stitch into was, you know, a really nice thing to do as well. Don't forget, you've also got, let's move these to one side, the beautiful masks that have got layers of paint built up on them that when they're glued down are going to give some nice interesting effects to a mixed media project as well. And then you've also got your Yupo paper masks that you've got them for lots and lots of future projects. So there's lots and lots you can do with this experiment. If you do want me to do a mixed media video where I put this type of composition together using these, please drop me a comment below. Please, if you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me grow, and it makes it all worthwhile. The more people I can reach out there and help with the different techniques that I'm using. If I was going to take this in another direction again, there's so many things you could do with this. If you tried using transparent paints rather than opaque paints, you would get a completely different print and look again. If you swapped your paints for an open paint, again, you would get a completely different range of prints again. So there's lots and lots of ways that you could develop this process in the future as well. So if you're interested in any of that, or you've got any comments, any questions, anything you'd like to ask me, I'm here to help. You know, so just drop me some comments below. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.